Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Boyan, and welcome to this Hemi workshop. The theme today is music business, the topic event management and promotion, but we're going to focus quite a bit more on the promotion side of the business. And the subtitle of my talk is Fostering and Nurturing Positive Relationships and Business in the Balance. Now, thank you very much for those that are attending live. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to ask questions, but maybe. You can find in the chat the presentation and also some additional reading material from me that I think you'll find interesting. It's about the beginning of the promotion industry, starting in the Americas, and some notable figures that are promoters, agents, and managers in the industry that I found interesting and meeting over the years. So the key takeaway would be, we'll go through a general information and notes about the emergence of promoters and talent agents. Those things are connected. The context will become crucial to understand the interplay between those two roles in the industry more clearly when we get to all the stages of the promotion process, the booking, negotiation, doing the deal, doing the show, during the post-show settlement, if applicable, and reporting and following up. So in accompaniment, you can find that information right down on the side. And we'll get started with a little bit of history. We're not going to go too deeply. So where do actual promoters come from? What's the history of the promotion business? So the word to promote, as we know, means to push something forward, to move something forward, and to raise upward as well. A good example of that is like a military promotion. Lieutenant, you've been promoted to a captain with bigger responsibilities and maybe a little bit higher pay. We don't know, but definitely a bigger responsibility. In our case here, of course, we're talking about the development of an artist or an artist brand in conjunction with developing a promoter's brand. So we have essentially creating loyalty within a certain market, and that is the entirety of the promotion. It's a complicated issue, though. It has many definitions, but we're going to try to narrow those down as the day goes. The story of promoters is inextricably linked with the creation of talent or booking agencies, as we know them, first starting in the United States as early as 1898, which was the William Morris Talent Agency. The term booking agent comes literally from handling books. All venues, all locations have a calendar, a book, and by making a mark on the book, you've effectively completed a booking. Think of a restaurant booking. It's sort of a reservation, isn't it? You're reserving something. So you've made a booking. The talent agents would have you that booking is quite a bit more complicated where they come from, not like a restaurant reservation. And that's exactly what we're going to be discussing. Venues from lavish opera buildings to small cinemas to black box theaters can be converted into live music spaces. And venues are the other necessary part that you need in order to facilitate the live production of a show. On the less glamorous side, a venue can be a local bar, local gymnasium, or a space that can fit enough people for a school dance, or for something a bit more rowdy, a festivity. The older generation of promoters originated from the position of university social secretaries. So while they were at university, there will be a social committee that was responsible for providing entertainment, organizing school dances, balls, meetings. And these social secretaries will be the ones tasked to get on the phone and source an act, a band or an artist, who would come to perform at their school venue for the entertainment of the students, much less often for the entertainment of the faculty, which of course had a completely different taste than those rock and roll kids back in the 60s, which is where this was taking place. So it's important to understand the interplay between the artist, the agent, and the promoter. Whom do you contact? Who do you get in touch with? And here there's a common misconception between agents and managers that I think is prevalent in especially the Eastern European area, and maybe all over the world, in fact, that we need to do away with. Even though the agent and the manager position are sometimes smashed into each other, both persons do have a dramatic effect of the quality and longevity of their client's career, but they do slightly different things. Well, we can say that both require a slightly different set of skills and they work on a different timeline. The manager is supposed to look out for the long-term development of the artist's career, while the agent can focus on short-term goals, like the next tour or the next few dates. And usually the manager instructs the agent as to what that complete strategy is. Sometimes over a period of successful number of years, the agent can become part of the band or the artist inner circle and work more closely with the manager So it's very good to be informed if there's a certain dynamic within that band. If the agent is de facto, a quasi-manager, if they're so close to the management, then talking to the agent would be enough to secure an even more lucrative deal for yourself as the promoter. And so it's always important to find out who do you contact, who is the person responsible for this particular task. More people are coming in again. Welcome, welcome. So let's talk about the agents. Who are agents? A talent agent or a booking agent is a person who finds the jobs for many different people, actors, journalists, film directors, musicians, models, professional athletes, screenwriters, and other, entertainment or sports professions. In addition, you can say that the agent defends, supports, and also promotes the interest of their client and securing the best possible position for them at that particular time. The talent agencies, they specialize either in creating departments within a large agency. So an agency can have a literary, an actor, and a music department, or it can be just a solo agent working from their home or office. A lot of the bigger agencies tend to specialize in particular things. Modeling handles their process one way, commercial agent, literary, voiceover has particular agencies, broadcast journalists have their own representation, sports, and of course, all the way down to music, which is what we care about. Now, there's sometimes a little bit of a crossover, right? Because you have some actors that also like to sing, or sometimes they like to think they can sing, and we tolerate it because they're an actor. But I think we let them get away with that. But in a sense, let's say a movie actor like Kevin Bacon will have a theatrical agent for movies, and he will also have a booking agent for music to book his band, the Bacon Brothers, which him and his brother created some time ago, and they do go out and play the occasional gig, and they're actually not bad, in my personal opinion. A few other actors are represented for music, such as Kiefer Sutherland, Jeff Bridges, and X-Files star David Duchovny. He also has a music agent. You can have it the opposite way. So musicians turn to actors. So, for example, Lady Gaga, when she became a more active actor, they would acquire a service of a talent agent that specializes in that particular field. It wouldn't be her music agent that handled that representation. And it's because the film agent would have all the right contacts within that context to help her develop that side of her career. And all of those should work in tandem with the manager. Now, we can also say that most times an agent represents a particular talent for a given territory. So it's not uncommon if you have a North American agent, an agent for Europe, an agent for Asia, for example. So a knowledge of local business prospects and a list of established and trusted local partners / promoters are the agent's strongest weapons when they work in a territory. So it's not that agents are irreplaceable in a given territory, but let's say that they're not so easily replaceable when they also have the long list of partners whom they've worked for a number of years. And so those are their calling cards. Now, becoming an agent is a fairly straightforward situation. You just say that you're an agent and you become an agent. Nothing more is required. Very much like a manager. You just announce that you're a manager and all of a sudden you're a manager. There's no certification. There's no particular schooling, even though I highly recommend it. However, in certain parts of the world, it's not that easy. But let's define what an agent is first. So the agent, you are the middle person for a business transaction that involves the hiring of entertainment or sports talent for a particular job that involves that client's specialty to an organization, company, theater, or concert promoter that can realize a profit by exploiting the entertainment flair of your particular client. So you're in the middle, and there's a lot of responsibility resting on your shoulders. Nowhere are agents more prevalent than in the state of California, where there is a particular labor code, section 1700 actually, that decides that no person shall engage or carry out the occupation of a talent agent without getting a license from the Labor Commission first. So in some situations, the role of an agent is actually sanctioned by the state. And if you have your paperwork and a check for $250, it used to be $250, then you're ready to apply to become an agent. And good luck with that, because the competition is fierce, especially in the state of California. Now, a little bit of history, and one of the most noted agents that helped create the live music industry in America and then on a global scale is Mr. Frank Barsalona. It's spelled almost exactly like the city, but it's slightly different, Barsalona, Barcelona. Frank was born in 1938, and while he worked in the mailroom, distributing mail at the GAC agency based in New York City, he learned most of his trade. He wanted to apply it to a slightly different context, and in 1964, he finds his company, Premier Talent Agency, which he later sells to William Morris, which is now William Morris Endeavor. So, but in 1964, they were the first booking agency to focus on rock performance. So rock performance, 1964, these are the years when the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, the Kinks, and the Beatles were active. So it's the dawn of rock and roll, literally. A little bit after Chuck Berry, and a considerable amount of time after Elvis released his first record, but that's a story for a different workshop. The credo that promoters inherited from Barcelona was to present the artist in the best possible light. He made them realize that by doing so, by investing money in that particular approach to presenting a live show, that they were promoting, they were building themselves up as well as the artist in the given territory. And that way you could potentially increase the profile in the local market or nationally. Ideally, you make a profit on the show, and with your newly developed audience, you can sell other artists, or you can sell the same artist down the line at a bigger venue or at a higher price, all leading to essentially an uplift in your revenue stream. So it is the money. It's not all about the money, but it is about the money. So Barcelona envisaged that the artists and their supporting roles in the industry, record companies and promoters, would work together in tandem to create a bigger brand for the artist, and then they would be able to benefit from that brand down the line. So it's very important to remember, for a promoter, promoters are the first money in and last money out. Therefore, they are a de facto investor in the future career of a particular performer. So if you're contacting a performer as an artist or as a manager, know that this person will be essentially investing in your career, so you better have a very good business proposition for them. Now, what the live industry brought to the table was the freedom that artists now had from their record label contracts. Prior to this, the only way artists was able to make money was if they were paid by a record man to cut a record, because records were on wax, right? By the time the multi-track recording was developed in the 60s, you were able to record several things at the same time, but it's still very far from what we have today. Anyway, with this new income stream, artists had more time and money to invest and develop the production of their live shows, thus attracting more and bigger audiences, making it a bit more attractive. Now, I underscore production because the demand for the show, as we will refer to it, have increased over the years. With the development of technology in particular, people expect quite a bit when they come to a particular performance. Lights, sound effects, smoke, haze, lasers, holograms, giant robots, giant puppets, 3 levels of stages, cranes, cars on the stage, fire, and flame. If you're a fan of Rammstein, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say flame. Lots and lots of it. They do get burned quite often, as far as I understand. Anyway, so in many cases, these casting directors and other businesses and promoters, they go to talent agencies to find the artist whom they're looking for. The artist is paid on a percentage of the gross income of the artist. Now, it's an important thing. They used to be called the 10%ers. I think there's even a TV show now about that called the 10% or the 10%ers. And the money is taken from the gross earnings of the artist for any given engagement. So that is before any deductions have been made, or after certain deductions have been made. We're going to get into that in a little bit more depth later. So these days, if an agent of a more established artist knows that their artist is very strong in their particular territory, let's say an agent from France knows that their artist can sell out a venue in Bulgaria, then sometimes they're willing to ask for a lump sum payment of a fee instead of a percentage. It can be literally anything, and they probably would feel that it's fair to ask for that. And it's our job as promoters to negotiate into or out of that situation. So the theme is business in the balance, and business in the balance revolves around relationships. Relationships can be difficult to maintain in the ever-evolving music industry layout landscape, specifically because technology keeps getting in the way and creating interesting opportunities that sometimes are good, sometimes are bad, but it's up to us to navigate that field anyway. Now, promoting companies, they can be small independent companies of 2 to 3 employees like Pan Harmony or Blue Hills, which are the companies I'm involved with, or they can be regional developments, regional departments of global conglomerates that have thousands of employees across the world, like a company like Live Nation, for example, or AEG. Live Nation sometimes acquires or buys out the local operation of a promoter. Promoter ABC sells their market share to Live Nation, sells their company. And however, Live Nation sometimes keeps those people on the payroll because they have knowledge of the local market. Not to mention, they also speak the local language, which is not necessarily the case of a big conglomerate. So large companies often do with financial resources, they often do hire specialists on a local level, which maximize their profits quickly, and you don't have to spend a lot of time to train somebody who's very good at the business angle to speak the local language. And I believe that's a good idea. So the process from booking an artist to production, to concessions, to sanitation, or cleaning up when we're done, is a very interesting one. And let's say we would like to book a popular artist for our territory. We probably like an artist and we think they're great. However, a very strong word of caution, that cannot be the sole factor upon which we are making our business decision. Just because we like the artist and we have faith in the artist, that does not mean that the local market will respond the same way. That also goes for certain artists that are incredibly popular in one territory, 6 hours away from you. But it may turn out that in your territory, they have very little traction and they can attract very, very little audience. That's where promotion comes in, but only to a point. So whenever you're making that decision, faith in the artist and the local market, the fact that people will show up because the artist is great, is definitely not enough. However, research, statistics, actual promotion are quite a different topic of conversation. And that's what we're talking about right now. So at the beginning, you have to chase an agent for an artist on their roster. Agents have rosters, a series of artists, and you say you'd like to work with them. So after a few concerts under your belt, the process may get easier or faster, depending on your relationship with the agent. If you've managed to foster a positive relationship, it'll get faster and easier, definitely. And sometimes the agent will come back to you and they will offer you an artist on their roster without even you having to ask, because they've appreciated the way you've handled the business on your end and everybody's been satisfied with your overall performance. The agent takes their information from various different sources when they make decisions, but the follow-up and the reporting that you do back to the agent about the historic ticket sales of the act in that particular territory is something of vital importance to them. So that's something that they should know. And you as a promoter should also be aware if the act has been in your territory and how many tickets they have sold previously. It's a good way to start. So let's start from here with a sip of tea. And with our hypothetical. So you like an artist, you think that they will perform great in your territory. You've located the agent's email. You've sent an email saying, I'd like to book your artist to perform here. The agent comes back to you with a series of questions. They can be anything from, what is the size of the venue? What is the capacity? How many people can the venue fit? And how many people can it fit reasonably without it being overcrowded? What will the average ticket price of the show be? Have you thought about that? In a currency that is acceptable to them. So if you give them in the local currency, maybe you'll have to transfer it over to euros or dollars. What are the local taxes and commissions? In other words, the money that you're making and you're paying to the artist, is that going to be downsized in a certain way? And what dates do you propose? Sometimes you have the right to propose, sometimes you can prefer a certain date. It's quite rare. The bigger the artist, the more you have to work with the date that they give you. And last but not least, how much do you propose to pay the band? What is the offer for the fee? The magic word. Fee or honorarium. Usually, we just refer to it as a fee. At this point in time, you may receive also the artist rider. Now, riders are certain pieces of documentation that are vitally important to a production because they list the technical requirements for the artist to be able to perform well in your area. So you need to be aware of those requirements. And some other riders that may not include their dietary needs, their hospitality requirements. We want to be able to drink this water, this tea, and maybe have a nice meal before we go up on stage. Sometimes that can be included in your deal. Sometimes it is not included in your deal. If the band is small, they're happy with 3 sandwiches and there we go. But the bigger the act, the chances are there's going to be a detailed menu. Sometimes bands do travel with their own kitchen and kitchen staff. So whoever's in charge of your catering will be going shopping with them on the morning of the show. So much fun to be had. And so The writers are important because they will determine the type of deal you may be signing. Sometimes artists travel on a bus to your territory. Sometimes they fly in. Those are costs that you're going to have to calculate. And then you're going to go to your venue manager. You're going to talk to your technical team, and then you're going to be able to estimate the cost of the delivery of the requirements of the show. They have to be in your budget. It's a good idea for them to be in your budget. So before I share a little bit of a budget that I've created for you, let's talk about a few basic deals that you can sign with an artist. There's a variety of them, but we're going to stick to 2 or 3 basic ones so we don't get bogged down in too many details. The first one is a straight guarantee of the fee. So this is a sum which you're contractually promised to pay the band, no matter how many tickets are sold for the date, no matter what happens. That's a promised sum that you owe to them, and that's it. Some exceptions may arise in case you have to cancel or postpone, such as what we had during the recent pandemic, and maybe you don't owe that money directly or right away, but that's all a matter of proper communication and negotiation. Other exceptions include medical emergencies or so-called force majeure circumstances. Those are such that are outside of human control, or so-called act of God. Those can be mitigating circumstances before, during, or after the show has happened, and they could trigger some sort of a renegotiation of the deal. But you'll find that force majeure clauses will be a major part of contracts. We'll get to that in a little bit. So a straight guarantee is just that. It's a guaranteed sum to the artist, whatever happens, which makes, in this case, makes sure that the financial risk of this particular concert falls solely on the promoter. The promoter has all the cost, and they stand to potentially make some money. However, they are guaranteed to lose money if they don't take certain steps. So it is something that's more common for people that are very fully aware of their costs and can manage their costs on a local level. However, some productions will require a different type of deal that we're going to get to. So whenever you're selling the idea of a straight guarantee to an agent, make sure that you tell them that, of course, we all know that the risk is on the promoter's shoulders, but it's a strong word of caution here. Don't try to overemphasize that, because the agent may get nervous that you are not prepared to handle the show properly and you may lose money, in which case you may not have enough money to pay the artist. So if an agent loses faith in your ability as a promoter to sell the show, that is definitely getting off on the wrong foot. That is not fostering a positive relationship from the first one. So make sure that you know what your calculations are before you start. Now, it's a very common misconception, and it's something that we see today, that the artist guarantee or performance fee is the sole and most important cost of the show. That is an amateur mistake we'll see every day, and we continue to see. Concert has many different costs, the majority of which go toward the production of the event and the promotional cost, the marketing, the advertising. And so these are much easier to see when you calculate them on a budget template. And I have created a budget template that we're going to look at right now. I've adapted it to my needs. And on it, you'll see some of the basic stuff, dates, whoever is the responsible people for the concert, your personal contacts, your phone number. And then from there, we're going to see the revenue streams, the taxes, the expenses, and the magic word for a promoter, the break-even point. That's the point after which you start making some money, which is always good. Now let's dig into it a little bit. I'm going to share my screen. If anybody has questions, feel free to write them down, and we may get to them after the talk is over. There we go. Where is our budget? Fantastic. Can everybody see, or is somebody's view obscured? I'll try to enlarge it a little bit. Just a thumbs up would be great. Okay. If you can't see it at all, I may send it to you after that. Not a problem. So I've created a fictitious, thank you very much, Georges. I've created a fictional budget for the band The Killers with a Z, and they're going to perform at Domo Mladine in Belgrade. The top information here is just sets out the basic parameters of the contacts, your artist, your city, your venue, very important, the date, and then how many shows you're proposing to do. I like this here. Last change is made. That way you can track if you have too many copies of that particular budget. Local promoter, me, myself, and I incorporated. Contact Joe and settle with Ivan. Now, the word settle is going to come into play in the next example that we're going to take a look at. But anyway, The top here is our guaranteed fee, and we've decided to pay the killers 5,000 BGN, that's Bulgarian leva, and that's just easiest for us to see, but you can change this currency to whatever you want. We're not sharing anything with the artist at this point, and we are looking at our revenue calculation, where we have our early bird tickets, we have 100 on sale, and we have our regular tickets, 150. It's a small place. We only have 250 seats. However, we like the artist, and we think that the prices can be fairly high. So our first tickets are at 70, second one at 76, and the calculation of the total revenue comes over here. It's pretty neat, and it doesn't require anything besides a simple calculation, simple math. No pivot tables, no nothing for you to get to this particular situation. So sticking with the gross revenue, that is transported to the next cell, after which we have the lovely, very unpleasant, but very necessary legal taxes that get applied to a particular show. Your VAT, which for Bulgaria is 20%, your income tax, which for us is 10%, the PRS or collection society, we're going to get into that later, and the ticketing commission that you've paid the vendor, the ticket seller, to sell those tickets for you. This all comes out, and we have our net revenue after taxes. This term, net revenue after taxes, is different per territory, but we're just going to keep it very basic. Net revenue, I think, is good enough. And we get our average ticket price, which is one of the questions the agent was asking. What is my average ticket price? And so we have our revenue after taxes. And now that we've gone with the plus, we're going to take a look at the minuses. Before we go over to the break-even point down here, we're going to look at what's underneath. And all of these things are populated from the fields below. So scanning down to the expense sheet, we've settled on a very good venue rent. The guy is our friend, so the venue rent is very cheap. I like that price. We're not going to use very much production. We're going to hire a wardrobe assistant to take coats at the beginning. Fine. We're going to hire a stage manager to make sure everything goes according to plan. And we're going to hire 2 people security just to make sure no one gets hurt. Now, backline. This is a term that refers to equipment used by band. This can include everything from guitars to amplifiers to, it's usually musical equipment, actually. I was going to say lights, but that is different. So let's say the band travels without a drum kit, and we've had to hire a drum kit from a local music store or rental company or a friend, and we've paid them 200. That goes on there. We'd like to feed the artist, or rather the artist would like for us to feed them. That goes over here, the catering part. Everything else is included. The venue has fire extinguishers. We're not paying for flights. We're not paying for hotels. They have a stage, and we're fine. However, maybe we need a few towels for the artist. Usually they ask for some towels for the stage and some towels for after, depending on the situation. Venue costs, sometimes we have certain venues will ask for a damage contingency, which means they will ask for a certain money up front, just in case someone breaks something. You may inquire whether the venue isn't the insurance going to cover that. They may say no, insurance covers liability only, and not if somebody vandalizes my lovely bar. And so they may ask for that money up front. That is usually refundable when you leave, as long as none of the crowd or the band has broken anything, and you get that money back. But it's still an upfront cost that you have to pay. And here comes our advertising. The true work of the promoter is to be able to use the marketing assets they've been given from the artist and from their agent to put them into play to promote the show as best as possible. This is just a simple diversification here of the costs. We have our artwork. We are going to invest in posters and flyers. We're going to hire someone to make sure that we get those posters and flyers delivered and someone to get us radio spots. And so we're spending quite a bit of money on this particular part. After production, this is usually the biggest cost you have. And then here, cancellation insurance refers to, you can actually get that with your insurance broker if they provide that insurance. Not every country or territory knows about these type of insurance policies, but let's say the artist cancels because they're sick, you may insure the costs of the show that you have upfront costs that you're going to get those back, maybe. Contingency plan, always have a little money squared away just in case something happens. For larger events, the contingency plans can go up to 20%. That if your budget is over $1 million, that is a significant amount of money, $200,000. And it's up to your negotiation with the agent to be able to, for him to be able to understand that you need that contingency money just in case something happens. Now, for festivals, of course, this is handled in a completely different way because you're working with multiple agents and multiple bands, but it's good to have some money squared away just in case. and liability insurance. In case your venue doesn't have it, you may have to pay it. All of that adds up down here, and all of that gets transferred up to our expenses summary. There we go. The only thing that we haven't addressed is reimbursables. This is a situation in which the band, let's say, has spent money on taxi, and now they'd like to recover that, please, because we didn't provide transport for them when they were here, and now they've had to take a cab. It happens all the time, not a problem. They provide a receipt, you pay them. So after we collect all that, our guaranteed artist fee shows up here in the red, our 5,000, which is promised. No matter what happens, we have to pay that. And our total fee and total cost, including the fee, comes over here. Those two sums are collected, and here we have the magnificent break-even point. Now, the idea of break-even point is 85%. Now, let's talk about what this means first. So out of our total capacity of 250 people, we have to sell 210 tickets. And after all our expenses, on the 211th ticket, we're starting to make some money for ourselves. So we have to come here before that. Any changes to any of the costs or the tickets for the show or the artist fee will have an impact on that. If we're paying the artist 4,000 instead of 5,000, that should be a much lower number. We're now down to 189 tickets sold, and our risk is 75%, 3/4 of the room. Now, when an experienced agent looks at this number, they will say, okay, the risk is fairly allocated between both parties. It is very rare that you'll see a risk being allocated 50-50. Usually, if you want to book the artist, the agent will require that you share the majority. You burden the majority of the risk, because the band is so good. We have absolutely no doubt that they're going to sell out in your territory. So you're better off investing that money up front. An agent will never, ever allow you to make the same amount of money as an artist. So a 50-50 number there will definitely not fly. Usually it is between 15 to 20%. And some deals, you may even put a line that says promoter profit right here. It says promoter profit. I like some money for myself, please. However, that is very, very rare and only applicable in certain situations in certain venues. In the States, it's very common. I have not seen it in Europe, to be honest. And so our break-even point is very important, and this is what we're aiming for before we make the offer to the agent. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. There we go. So no questions so far, I see. We're moving on. So our second deal type, we started with the flat guarantee, a straight guarantee, and a flat guarantee, meaning nothing above that will be given to you unless it's a reimbursable expense. The other one that's very common is a guarantee split. And what that means, this is also called a versus deal, so one versus the other. That means that you promise to give a certain amount versus a percentage of the ticket sales after the deductions of the cost that you saw on the budget. That's why the costs are very important. Now, this deal is definitely more preferable. The financial risk between the agent and the artist are a bit more shared, because the agent knows that the more money you make, essentially the more money that the artist will make. And so they are interested in you succeeding. So they may lower the guarantee while they keep that number of the split high. So for example, X versus 80% is a common one. And so this type of deal does require the completion of a budget, or costing, as UK agents like to refer it to. It's something that I had to learn while I moved from the States, that costing or full budget is necessary for them to consider the show. They would like to know what your costs are. This is for two reasons. The first one is transparency. You show that you're transparent about what your costs are, you're honest. And then the other one is that you're showing that you're an expert, that you have a certain level of expertise when it comes to preparing a budget. If you cannot prepare a budget for a certain act, chances are that the agent will simply not answer your email ever again, because agents of a certain level, they demand a certain level of expertise before they go into communication. It's a very easy way to find out if someone is trying to put one over on you, or lie to you, really, in a very flat out way. And there are so many ways to check that if someone knows what they're doing or doesn't know what they're doing, it is almost instantly obvious to an educated agent or a well-seasoned promoter what the actual deals are. And it's something that comes with time and experience. And it's something that you can acquire by doing maybe a few shows, and you'll be able to learn from your mistakes much easier. But moving on, so a versus deal can include a flat sum of money, like a guarantee, or a percentage of the total ticket sales after costs. So as I said, an X amount of money versus 80% of the ticket sales, whichever is greater, is what the agent will require. So that calculation can play tricks on your break-even point because your break-even point will change. So you must carefully construct all the details and build in some financial buffers, like we put in our contingency, and we put in a few costs here and there that are legitimate costs. However, you'd like to keep them to yourself, just in case. That's something that needs to be communicated with the agent for fairness and transparency's sake. So the process is different for every concert and for a different agent, so it's very difficult to be exact. If an artist agent knows that their act is so strong, they will sell out the venue with confidence. They may even add a split plus. That means they can ask for the money that you've paid them as a straight guarantee, plus an additional one on top. And that happens in sold out concerts, and we've done that many times as well, which is, it's a good sign, technically speaking. We've made a serious amount of money, and surely the artist should share in that profit as well. An experienced artist, as I said before, the experienced agent will never allow you to make more money than the artist or as much money as the artist, and between 15 and 20% is what you can expect. Now, promoters of certain, let's say, promoters that are not so fair and transparent, they can try and use different tricks. So if you're an agent, if you have a friend who is an agent, or if you're an artist, you have somebody's asking a question, promoters do use certain tricks. For example, they increase their expenses on certain services, and that way they make the cost seem much higher than they actually are. Now, it's a decision that is incredibly dangerous to go into, even though people do it all the time, and can throw off your business relationship with that agent, with that artist, and maybe with an entire agency. So it's something that I definitely do not recommend ever doing. We've never done it, and we've been able to sleep so much better as a result. Not to mention that that way we've garnered the appreciation and the respect of all the agents, managers, and artists that we've ever worked with. And so this has to do with our own brand, our part of the promotion, that our reputation remains as intact as possible. So the third option that you have is the most straightforward one, and it's called a ticket deal or a door deal, essentially. And it takes the least amount of planning on the promoter's side, and it's equivalent to the let's just see what happens with the show agreement, probably with a smaller band. In this case, the risk is shared equally. The artist takes the risk of not making up their travel cost, and the promoter faces the risk of losing the money that they spent on the venue or the rental equipment. After the show, usually the trade-off is about 70-30. 70% goes to the artist, 30% goes to the venue promoter. Sometimes after deducting some VAT, if the tickets have VAT on them, or if there's a commission on the tickets, if you're using a different salesperson. Now, promoters who also own their venues, or if a promoter is part of a venue, they should be aware of their inner costs, and that way they will be able to know where their break-even is. And to them, it may not seem like a silly idea, but it really is. We'll see what happens when you come to the door and try to buy a ticket. And so establishing what your break-even point is makes a lot of sense. However, without an investment in marketing and advertising, any concert, regardless of what it is, has a chance of losing money. And it doesn't matter if an artist sells itself, you still want to maximize on that opportunity. And so something that's important to mention here is the flow that payments are made. They can be made to the agent directly. So the agent receives the money that you owe, and they distribute it after that onward between the band or the manager. You can pay directly to the manager and their company, and they handle the distribution, agent's percentage, artists, or you can pay the artist direct. If the artist is small enough, or they like everything to come to their bank account because of their agreement with their manager, that's totally fine. However, you have to be aware of your bank transfers, your bank transfer fees, and the fees that other payment methods may incur. So if you're speaking to the agent to begin with, and you say, the agent would say, we only accept wire transfers, and we only accept wire transfers on an invoice payment, then you automatically know that your invoice may be taxed and your wire transfer costs, let's say 30 euros. It may be an insignificant amount of money overall, but that is something that should exist in your budget. If you know a cost, you should put it in there, and that will make you a smarter decision maker when it comes down the line. So let's say that you've conducted your research, you made your budget, you're ready to move on. And you've settled, you would like to offer a straight guarantee or flat guarantee. You don't want to make your life too complicated. You're not going to do a full budget. You figure that this artist is at a particular level. The agent confirms the date and the deal is accepted. So the term of acceptance can also vary. And acceptance usually comes together with a contract or at least a memorandum with a deal memo. And the deal memo lists everything pretty much that's on the budget without going into too much in the numbers, date, amount, and a timeline of payments. So the agent can sometimes require partial payment. They can require full payment of their commission only, or a total prepayment of the fee. It really depends on first of all, your relationship with the agent and their relationship with the artist. The stronger, the bigger the artist is, the higher the chances that you're going to require to have a significant upfront cost. But that's because the agent feels very strongly that there's no chance you're going to lose money. And hopefully you believe them enough that that's the case. Hopefully. And so a common agreement is a 50% of the fee due at signing and 50% due, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks before the concert. 2 weeks so the payment can clear the bank. The method of payment that requires invoicing, which is a common anti-money laundering method enforced in most EU countries, is important to consider. The problem comes when these invoices carry with them tax liabilities. In certain countries, every invoice is taxed with VAT. So whatever your VAT is in your local country, somebody sends you an invoice for a service that's performed in a EU country, according to law, you owe VAT on that to the government. And so if you've agreed on a fee of 1,000 euros, suddenly your fee is now 1,200 euros, 1,000 to the artist and 200 to your local tax office at the end of the month. So once the term of the acceptance have been established and you've agreed on the timeline, you move on to signing a contract. Now, many agent-promoter relationships work on a handshake, but it's technically never a great idea to leave anything up to chance, especially in a world that's so full of unpredictability. And after especially the recent pandemic that we've had, having something in writing will be a key in maintaining a good relationship. That way you're avoiding the he said, she said interactions, unclear phone calls, and misunderstandings. If something is written down and signed upon, then that is pretty much the cornerstone of your future interaction with this individual. And it probably has to do with your future business contacts with him or their agency. And so it's a good idea to do that. Now, contract negotiation, review, correction, amendment, final signing can take up anything from 2 days to 2 months. And so the bigger the financial stake, the larger the contract will be, and the bigger the riders will be. So, and that makes it for a very complicated production. So legally, there's a debate about which part of the rider is fully enforceable, by the way. Chances are that if there's a key technical or safety measure is not in place, then your show may be in trouble. The artist may refuse to go on. However, it is highly unlikely that someone will refuse to perform if their bowl of M&Ms do not contain all the required colors. Now, the bowl of M&Ms and the brown M&Ms is a story referring to the band Van Halen, and it's something you should check out for your amusement later on. It has to do with writers specifically. So you've done the deal, you've signed the contract, and now we're moving on to the next step, which is the production advance. Meaning it's a communication part that you're going to have to do in advance of the show. The bigger the show, the more detailed the advance has to be. And so it's a sort of a ticking all the boxes in the contract, and you get now to see what all the members of the promotion team are, or people that are involved in the production are, that are going to help you do that. So your bookers confirmed the show, your CEO signed it, and the information starts flowing, distributed through the proper channels. And the team comes together. And this is one of the strangest things I found about the promotion business. Your team comes together and works for a set amount of time, so let's say 3 to 4 to 6 months, to make sure that for the 90 minutes to 2 hours, you and your friends have a good, safe, undisturbed time at the concert with the best possible sound and lights, good access to refreshments, and sanitary facilities. So we work 6 months for 2 hours. Sometimes we work 3 months for 30 seconds or 3 minutes. And I find that to be one of the most bizarre parts of the industry. But overall, it's always been worth it. And the pleasure of seeing a sold-out concert with an artist that you like to work with is something that really can't be replicated in any other experience. And so I suppose that's what drives us forward. Technical communication, as long as it's done with fairness and transparency and expertise, will always be a beneficial relationship. Your technical director handles everything related to the show, the electrical requirements, the lighting instruments, the PA, which stands for public address, PA, lighting, rigging, if something needs to be attached to the roof of a venue, and all the other aspects. Sometimes you may want to outsource those to a different company. If you don't have a technical team, your technical director outsources everything to a so-called rental company, and the rental company provides the equipment and the personnel required to install, hang it up, to make essentially the production work. Riggers who have to climb up the scaffolding have a special, they have special certification that they have to pass in most countries. And the same thing for electricians. Electricians, of course, require special education when handling the grounding of outdoor stages in particular. That would eliminate the risk of somebody getting electric shock from touching a microphone. It happens quite often, and sometimes it can be very unpleasant or even deadly. So having a qualified electrician is key in any sort of production situation. And many venues have electricians built in. If they're serious venues, they would have someone that's in charge of that. If not they, then the venue manager would know. And so all these things add up. The rental company, the writers are handed off to the rental company, and the rental company reviews them. And your technical director at this point becomes the supervisor of the production process to make sure that they get the reports to the promoter about the progress of the construction, the reliability of the production instruments, if there's a problem, and of course, if they're available even in your country, and to make sure that the costs don't go above what your budget is already. You're reporting, as a technical director, you're reporting to the promoter, and you're letting them know if the expenditure has gone up or down, or if there's a potential problem, let's say, for example, bad weather. Now, there's electrical power is something very, very important. I wrote a very long piece about this, but I'll skip it. Essentially, in certain parts of the world, some electrical outlets work on 110 volts, and certain equipment uses 220 volts, like in Europe. And so the electrical matching, the electrical needs matching of certain production requirements are very important. And something else that is interesting, of course, is that a lot of heavy duty equipment works on different electrical currents. So you're going to have to be providing some different equipment that you may have never heard of as a promoter, but your technical director probably has if they know what they're doing. And it's vital that those things are in place, because nothing can terminate a concert faster than a power outage, as I'll share later. So we're going to the promotion side. Your marketing team, PR, press, and public relations handle the promotion of the event. You make a marketing plan with them, and they set it into motion. And of course, the idea is that they drive the profile of the event so much, they encourage more and more people to buy tickets to see the show. Their work depends on the marketing angle of the sale. What's the sales pitch to the press and to the people? And of course, on their connections within the local press industry. The more connections they have, hopefully, the more people they can draw. Even if a concert sells itself, let's say Adele or Beyonce, the marketing team still makes sure that everyone in the territory knows about the concert, even if it's a sold out concert, so they can create some buzz in the community. That builds up your brand as a promoter. You've done a sold out concert. That's important. And for some artists and their managers, nothing short of a sold out concert is acceptable. And so if you're working with a big star, if the show is not sold out, you, the promoter, will be the one to blame, because the artist is so popular all around the world. You've obviously made a mistake somewhere, and how can you now explain your mistake to them? That's happened a few times in Eastern Europe. So if you've rented the venue for the show, the venue, you'll be closely working with the venue manager. You, as a promoter, or your technical director will be there. They can, the basic thing they give you is the layout and all the available spaces of the venue. Sometimes you may have to pay extra for certain types of access, let's say early morning, late at night. But a basic layout will tell you all the entrance and the exits are, where the stage is going to be positioned, where the dressing rooms are, and where the catering is, because everybody likes to have a little snack, something to drink at any time during the day, especially when they're working so hard. And they would like to know where the toilet facilities are. Now, this is very funny. And toilets do become a point of contention for some concerts. A lot of people, including touring production and artists, would like to have their own toilet, and sometimes that's not possible. So they'll have to share. But it's a fun conversation explaining to them how those are. We only have 60 toilets, and they can only have one of them for themselves. Yes. So at festivals, that becomes an even bigger topic. But if you have 200,000 people around you, I think that explains that problem. Anyway, moving from sanitation to ticketing. which is another thing that should be handled as cleanly as possible. You probably have hired a ticket vendor, someone who handles the sale of the tickets. They are positioned at the entry points around the venue. It could be one entry point, several. It can be different categories of ticket if you have different tiers. If you have different lanes, for example, your regulars, your VIPs, your artist guests, it all depends on the venue and the deal you have with the artist. And then you are paying these people from the ticketing company to stay there and process the tickets or scan them. In order to put the tickets on sale, you've already signed a contract with this company and you've agreed on a particular percentage. They do you the big favor of processing all the payments for the tickets, which is a delicate operation, and make sure that they keep your proceeds, your revenue, in their bank account until you need it. Hopefully you won't need it until after the show, though sometimes you may. Whether it's straightforward, I go online and I buy a ticket and I move on is the case, or whether it's not. Yes, somebody says if it rains, thank you very much. Whether it's a straightforward purchase of a ticket or not depends on some markets. Now, this is not typical for every territory, but in most Western and bigger territories, you do have a lot of different identifiers in the tickets, which are added to the tickets to make sure that the individual who purchased the ticket is the one getting access to the show, not somebody else. In larger markets, and especially for stronger targets, secondary ticketing, or what's called scalping, is a big problem. Now, scalping, if you remember from your Western, your cowboys and Indians movies, the probably wildly exaggerated practice of Native American tribes scalping their victims after vanquishing them in battle. And since the prices of the secondary ticketing market could sometimes be outrageous, I think the comparison may not be entirely inappropriate to scalping or secondary ticketing. And some websites such as Get Me In and Viagogo are notorious secondary ticketing sites, and they're usually in the court battling out a problem. This has happened to many artists. I think most notably Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran had a problem with secondary ticketing, and him with his promoter, Kilimanjaro Live, Stuart Galbraith. They made sure that the fans that purchase the ticket can purchase it at the face value, and they will not be scalped. They would not be scammed out of their hard-earned money to be able to see the artist. The artist intervened there and said that they'd like to stop that practice, and the promoter did a very big task in making sure that that happens. And so promoters can be agents for very good changes in the industry, provided that they want to continue building a relationship and are not too greedy to go after the money. So security is another mandatory element, usually outsourced to a specialized security company. The personnel make sure that only those with clearance to a particular part of the venue with access can come in and get out. Sometimes the artist brings a security officer with them and they instruct your local team what the needs of the artist are. Sometimes the security personnel for the artist knows how the audience behaves, where they behave a little bit more wildly, which song they start bouncing and shaking the barricades, and they will let your security officer know. They will be able to let your team know, and that way you can prevent a problem from happening. And so you'll notice sometimes on some passes that you have the AAA designation, which refers to access all areas, which is the solid gold of badges that we want to have. Other types include working, production, guest, management, or tour, or sometimes it will say tour with escort privileges. For example, if there's a nephew in the local town that like a photo with the band, so you can escort them in to get that photo, and you have escorting privileges. The main reason why security is there is to protect the public from themselves when it comes to a massive crowd. It's secondary. There's a secondary team that protects the artist and makes the artist feel safe. But first and foremost, you're protecting the audience from hurting themselves or from stepping over each other, from creating a collapse in the crowd. A good security officer has been trained in crowd control management and crisis solutions. The second one, especially relevant when it comes to medical emergencies. And crowd management is applied in many different ways, usually by splitting the incoming and outgoing crowds into different corridors. You can think of the very unpleasant lines that you have to get through in the airport. It's something like that. Hopefully at a show, it's significantly better planned by the security officer there. A show, after all, is a place of very high emotion, and you need to make sure that you distribute your security staff and you instruct them in a very particular way when it comes to handling the show. The genre of music and the layout of the venue definitely play a part in that consideration. And so the needs of the artist are on the side, and of course the needs of the production team. The best security personnel I can say are those who are absolutely invisible, but when they're needed, they're very quick to react. And that's usually the team you want to be working with. During the show, they're always on high alert. They're very vigilantly monitoring the crowd. So they're not looking behind the concert, they're looking at the crowd, making sure they can see how the crowd is reacting. If somebody is feeling faint or sick, they will be able to, they will trigger a medical emergency and get that person to some help, maybe some water, dehydration. It happens in these big crowds. And the production manager is monitoring the way that the equipment is acting, if it's working, if it's not working, if there's a problem with power fluctuations or with air conditioning. And they're always sending reports out to the promoter, so the promoter makes sure that everything is going according to plan and they don't need to engage with anyone in particular. So whenever troubles occurs, the show absolutely must go on. Stopping a concert can make a crowd very nervous very, very quickly. Starting a show late can anger a crowd up to a certain point, but stopping the show midway through a song is often a sign that something has gone wrong, and you'd like to avoid those situations. Now that there are these infamous artists that like to walk off the stage without any explanation. I think I read that Morrissey did it, Morrissey from the band The Smiths. He did it recently, and you leave the promoter to clean up the mess. Now, if there's a legitimate problem, then this is announced over the PA to the audience, and they're given a time frame within which the problem will be resolved. The most important thing is to maintain calm and ask the audience for patience. Usually everybody's very patient. Everything comes through in the end, but it simply needs to be properly communicated. There are certain concerts that don't go as smoothly and require sometimes that all production hands assist in the solution of a particular problem. I'm reminded of a show that we did in 2012 with a certain band from Essex, England. And we had two generators powering the stage from behind the stage, and one of the generators started overheating. And knowing full well, if the generator stopped, that means the concert would stop. We'd have 25,000 angry fans, not to mention the artists and the production team waiting for an explanation. We had to form a chain of people, and we took turns pouring water over the transformer to make sure that it didn't overheat. So as you can see, show business is not all glitz and glamour, especially behind the stage. And you have to get your hands dirty. Doesn't matter what you think your position is in the production. So I'm conscious that we're running a little bit late. I will be a little quicker. Another very important part of the show is the merchandise sales. This is important both for you and the artist. Those, of course, t-shirts, hoodies, lighters, bottle openers, all sorts of knickknacks that are branded with the logo of the artist. And for many bands, especially in the heavier genre, the income from t-shirt sales is one of the very few ways they actually earn money. So it's something very important. For smaller concerts, they may ask someone from the promoter's team or the promoter themselves to set up a little stand and, and sell t-shirts during the show. It's very important here, and I underscore this, that you know what the legal requirements for selling merchandise in your territory are. Taking cash in exchange for a t-shirt is almost never entirely legal, specifically if you plan to do it 200 extra times. And so you have to make sure that you're doing these things right, not to get on the wrong side of the law in any way. Bigger artists, of course, they can outsource the service to a merchandising company. They come separately, they produce, ship, receive, set up the merchandise, and they sell it at the show. Sometimes they can hire local staff who speak the local language, instruct them in the sales practice of a particular artist, for example, the price, what bundles they're offering, what the discount is, maybe offer a sign-up sheet or a mailing list, everything that can go through the merch booth, which is a very important part of the process for small and for large artists as well. They make significant amount of money from selling merch. And sometimes you can negotiate that the part of the merch can go to you. A percentage of the merch sales can go to you as a promoter. For certain artists, that is quite possible. For others, it's quite impossible. And sometimes they just pay a small concession fee to use a local ticketing vendor or local someone who has a cash machine that can issue receipts. That kind of service, which is a mandatory for something to be done legally, at least in our territory. So the concert is over. Everything has been taken care of. The band is retired to the dressing room for a relaxing glass of wine or tea, whatever their presents are, but you still have work to do. You get your report from your production manager to make sure that they haven't been any incidents, any emergency situations, that the medical team, fire department, or police have been called for any reason. And if everything is squared away, then the production manager may supervise the strike down or the disassemblement of the stage, and the rental company starts packing and leaving. You want to make sure that they leave on time because you're paying for the venue rental. So if they stay overtime, that means you're going to owe extra money to the venue. and you like to keep all your costs to a minimum. Depending on the deal you've signed, if you've signed a straight guarantee, then you don't have to do anything. But if you've signed a split deal, that means you have a settlement to do. If you remember in the budget, it said settle with Ivan the accountant. And so you're going to have to now get into a meeting with the representative of the artist. And in this meeting, you'll have the vendor, the ticket vendor, who will certify the number of tickets sold and the income from the tickets, the show's tour manager and production manager, and you're going to go over the costs of the budget according to the budget you've submitted. If there are any changes or amendments that need to be made, they're done right there. These meetings can be very, very straightforward. A break-even point has been reached. It's been surpassed, so everybody's made some money. However, if there's big changes or fluctuations in price, those have to be accounted for with receipts or invoices, something that shows that this was a legitimate expense. And in most cases, 99.9% of the cases, the tour manager or the tour accountant of the artist you're working with needs to sign that they accept these costs before you start splitting anything between the promoter and the artist. So the larger the production, the more complex the deal. For a smaller show, a flat fee is just fine, and just make sure you don't round up too much. A difference of 100 euros can sometimes make a big difference. Somebody says, why not? Why not to what question?
You were speaking about not bringing cash for the venues and to pay the artists. No, it was a joke.
Very good. Well, cash, it depends on the situation, really. If it's it really depends on the income stream, how the cash has come to be used. If it's a small amount, you're probably going to get away with it and present a receipt to your accountant. If you have a more complicated settlement agreement, it can be even for a straight guarantee, then you're going to have to prove to the local tax office that these are company expenses. And cash, someone can only sign a receipt against cash. They cannot really sign an invoice. And there comes the problem. But if you don't care, then you don't have to do anything. However, you are definitely missing out on declaring some costs that you have to declare for your company's expenses. And if you do 30 concerts a year, those little costs definitely can add up to a much bigger amount. And you definitely don't want to leave money on the table. After all, you're trying to maximize your profit so you can bring an even bigger artist on. That makes sense? Okay, we're finishing up here. So post-show, another thing that needs to be mentioned is the so-called collection society, the PRO, Performing Royalties Organization, PRS, Performing Royalties Society, is known in the UK. And though those are the people that are essentially in administration of the copyright law. And the copyright law says that if you're using the compositions, if you're using the compositions of a particular artist, even the artist that just performed them, and you use their recording, then you owe, by law, you owe them a licensing fee for using their music and their rights. It's a little strange that an artist that's just performed their songs also gets paid for the fact that they've performed them, but that is part of one of the many magical parts of the music industry that's shrouded in mystery, and that is a topic for a different conversation altogether. Publishing and neighborhood rights. But this is something that you're going to have to consider. And a promoter usually enters into an agreement with their local PRO, and you receive a sort of a license for the concert. You say, I'm planning to do the Killers with a Z at this venue, and this is the date. And after that, the fee that you have to pay them is usually calculated based on a tariff that they've decided. And sometimes for a ticketed event, it is a percentage of your gross profit. So that's before even VAT is taken off, which essentially is from the biggest possible revenue. They take a percentage and they deduct their own fees and they send it down to the artist in some time. Too long to explain, I'm afraid, and it's definitely a tricky subject, but make sure that you're on the right side of the law here and you don't try to circumnavigate them. So in closing, to put everything together, as a young promoter, you chase an agent, you prepare the offer, you know what deal types you can make and what offers you can make. You can negotiate and maybe leverage your way into a better situation for yourself. You hire a venue if you don't have one. After the booking is completed, you advance, you have good communication. If it has to be canceled for any moment, you still have to do a proper communication, proper explanation of the reasons. We do the show, we clean up, we go home. And then the next day we'll report back to the agent about how things went, how many tickets we've sold, and that helps to build a strong rapport and create some loyalty between them. So in summation, if you work with fairness and transparency, you can begin to foster a really positive relationship with the agents, and by extension, their artists, their managers, their tour support, and maybe the agencies that they're represented. People in the industry do talk, and they do take each other's advice. Sometimes they don't, to their detriment. Sometimes they do, and they're all the wiser for it. And as you have seen, the job of a promoter carries many responsibilities, legal as well as moral. If you're fair and transparent to the agent and the artist, you honor your contract with them, you make their financial contributions you promised on the agreed timeline, you honor your contribution to the rental company and their staff, and you provide for them financially, but also you're a good mentor and a good leader in this particular role, and you use your expertise and care to deliver to the audience the best possible show for this particular ticket, for this particular artist. So avoiding conflict with the law or the local authorities, as long as everybody goes home happy and you made a little profit, hopefully, the show must and will definitely go on. Okay. I will take some questions if anybody has some.